podcast. And we are here today with Cory Godar and Lane Housner. So we're going to talk about their season, their Kansas hunt, Nebraska, all of that. And if you've listened to Cory on some of the other podcasts, you know, or you've been following along with Latitude and all that stuff, Cory killed an incredible deer. And the stories that I've heard on these podcasts, I don't feel like is a really good reflection of like who Cory is and like what probably went down on this hunt, because I feel like I know Cory pretty good and Lane as well. And Cory sounds really stoic, really business minded. I mean, he's interviewing for a job on every podcast. And, you know, Lane, I just told Lane, I said, you know, no offense, buddy, but I don't think I would use those adjectives for you. Lane's a very free spirited individual. And if you're seeing the video of this, there's lots of smiles going on. This is going to be a really fun one. But how you doing tonight, boys?
Good, man. Good.
Yeah, I'm doing good, man.
Wow.
Yeah, I haven't seen Cory in a hot minute, dude. How's dad life treating you, bud?
It's treat me, Lane. It's treat me. I'll tell
you. So you guys, let's go into like a little bit of like the history of like Lane and Cory, because I feel like the first time I was ever introduced to Lane was kind of like through Cory at an ATA or something, and he was talking about Lane being like a hell of a hunter, but also did some filming work and stuff like that. So how did you guys connect?
Man, Lane, I think I met you at the first Mobile Hunters Expo I went to, wasn't
it? Yeah, I do too, man. I think the first time I ever talked to you, you were doing the film contest. Yep. Remember that? And I was like, dude, good job with your film. We like kind of met and like introduced ourselves, and pretty much after that, dude, we've pretty much been buddies. I mean, like, we kind of stayed in contact, you know, in every single show. Pretty much just always met up with you. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I saw Lane had done the In the Present stuff and, like, obviously knocked out of the park with that. And I remember trying to get him some Latitude gear and go that whole route. And he's always hunting out of something, doing this, doing that. But, you know, we just kind of became buddies. And then, man, I watched you kill a lot of freaking deer over the last 5 years or whatever it's been. And so, yeah, man, we just kind of connected through that show. And then, you know, we just kind of became friends and, you know, had a lot of respect for his hunting. And when we kind of started talking about filming together, I was like, yeah, I'd love to run around the woods with Lane. That'd be a blast. So,
yeah, I remember when I got that text from Mao. He's like, hey, man, we're looking for filmers. Like, you want to do it? I was like, he was like, you'll probably be filming Cory. I was like, oh, hell yeah, dude. I'm in 100%. But
so, yeah, that was the first time that I'd met Lane too, was at that Mobile Hunters Expo. And I remember talking to him outside and asking him why he didn't enter something into the film contest. And he was like, dude, it was like $25 to enter. He's like, I don't, you know, he's like, I can get a bunch of double cheeseburgers with that. It's like,
yeah, dude, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know, man. It's not, to me, it's not a competition, you know what I mean? But to some people it is, but it's all what you want out of it, you know what I mean?
So was that the first time, this year was the first time that you had filmed for Cory?
Yeah, yep. That was the first time I ever hunted with you, Cory, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So what was the plan like going into it? You get the text and it says, hey, you want to film? You're going to film for Cory. Like logistically, how did the planning go? Because like, I think a lot of times we think of it as like a very, I think in our minds in the background, we think it's like very professional. Like, oh, you're going to be here. We're going to film me. We're going to get these shots. We're going to have to do this. This is the way that it's going to go. And the dates and all that stuff, because it was a pretty long trip. So what was the planning portion of that between the two of you, having never hunted together and you know, just kind of having a friendship?
There really was a lot of planning.
None at all. I remember texting him like, dude, you think I should bring my kayaks? And he's like, no, I wouldn't bring my kayak. And I was like, well, I got an e-bike too. And you're like, dude, hell yeah, bring your e-bike. I was like, all right, sounds good. And then I remember being like, dude, do you want me to bring like tent, sleeping bag, you know, because like I'm mostly used to just doing stuff as cheap as possible. So like car camping, you know, pitching a tent where I can find something for free. Cory's like, nah, man, we got a whole Airbnb. I was like, oh man, this is like Taj Mahal over here. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was. There wasn't a lot of planning. It was pretty much just like, all right, there's the dates. You want to do it or not? You know, I was in, and then pretty much just met up with Cory out in Cincinnati, Ohio, and we drove out to Nebraska.
Yeah, I think Lane had when you had your test for fire school, I think it was, right? And so you had
Oh
to
yeah. I had that, and I wanted to
like
make sure I could do it before I could actually commit to it. So I waited.
right.
I think I was like 2 or 3 weeks, and then once I got the A-OK from that I was going to be like outside of that time, you know, I pretty much committed to it. So
Yeah, it just like worked out that he had like this gap, and I was like, dude, this is meant to be, you know?
yeah,
Because I mean, like a camera, you know, like a cameraman's a very important piece of a hunt. You know, like you're running around doing the same thing together. It's you know, it's two guys in the woods, two guys in a spot, and you want somebody you know that's a good bow hunter to be there with you so that you can trust. You know, it's a big thing. So like, I was freaking jacked up that Lane wanted to do it, and the dates got all out of whack because we had all the product launch with Latitude early September, where we normally went on this trip. You know, opening week, and we missed that. So we're going the second week of September to Nebraska, and Lane literally drove from PA, met me at my house in Ohio, and I remember when he showed up, he had his e-bike on the back of his car, and it was tied on to his bike rack with a Tacticam strap. And I was like, Lane, did you really just drive 8 hours from Pennsylvania with a Tacticam strap holding on your e-bike? And he's like, bud, I do it all the time, bud. I was like, all right, this is gonna work.
So for you, Cory, hunting with a new cameraman, you know, knowing Lane is capable, but along with that, you know, you had a lot going on with yourself. You know, this is the first time you're hunting left-handed. You had a bunch of medical stuff. You know, I mean, crazy medical stuff. What was your like mindset like going into this hunt, thinking about like, okay, it's going to be Nebraska, it's going to be for grit, I've got a cameraman, there's, I mean, in the back of your head there's got to be like your wife's pregnant, like there has to be like this immense amount of pressure going into this hunt, right? I mean, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean it. I don't know if like yeah, maybe pressure. I don't know if that's how I was feeling. I just like I was really excited. You know, it's like man, my whole life revolves around bow hunting. My whole job, like all I do is talk about this stuff. You know, from the second we get up to go to bed, and now it's like opening week. Like that's the best week of the year. You know, you wait all year for that, and on top of that, we're going out to Nebraska, which is, you know, going out west to bow hunt is just an awesome experience. And then to be doing it with Lane and be doing it with your buddies and meeting Al and D-Rock out there, and DJ was out there, and DJ had already shot a big buck, so I'm already jacked up and got FOMO that we weren't out there with him. And I mean, Lane and I were, you know, we had cruise control on 75, 80, just freaking hitting the road. I think we ended up leaving 2 days early, didn't we? Or a day and a half.
yeah, we
Like
did.
we just got anxious and just freaking went out there. So,
Yeah,
yeah, we were pumped. I mean, and the hunting mentality, I guess, like fortunately, Lane and I really, I would say we had a very similar thought process on how to approach it. Like we're both just kind of like, dude, we're just going to scout till we find the sign to hunt. If we don't find it, we're not going to hunt. So it's like very fortunate. Lane's like, dude, yes, absolutely, let's do that. And we fucking pounded ground. We walked. So yeah, we were jacked up. It was, you know, honestly just excitement, maybe a little bit of pressure, but not really. You know, just more excited. You know.
yeah.
And so Lane, for you, like, I know you've done this before as a cameraman and, you know, other type of stuff, but
Yeah.
I think you lean more towards the hunting for yourself now than kind of filming other folks. I mean, it's probably 80-20, 90-10, something like that now. So
Yeah.
what was it like for you going on this big trip, but not being able to hunt?
Oh man, I was still just kind of excited just to even experience it. You know what I mean? Like I've been watching the grid episodes for a little bit now, and like D-Rock's always like, "Oh, dude, Nebraska's awesome, man. First week, you know." So I was like, "Dude, I've never hunted Nebraska, so I was just jacked up, man. It was cool, and I didn't draw a Kansas tag either, so like I was just happy to be back out in Kansas, man. Kansas is a great state."
Yeah. So that was one of the things for me is like I feel like in that same mindset of I like just being along. Like I would just as soon my buddy killed one as I killed one because then,
Yeah.
I still get to hunt or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, Cory, had you ever hunted with a cameraman before? I know you've been a cameraman on many occasions, but have you had a filmer for you in the past?
I have, yeah. Not for a 2 week span, no, but yeah, a few days here and there. But most of that was in areas I would say I've already hunted and kind of knew, and you kind of go hang and hunt a spot versus being on a out of state trip with somebody in an area you've never been is not that it's too different, but it's definitely a little different. I mean, Lane and I were basically living together for 14 straight days, just doing nothing but trying to kill big deer. So it was a lot of fun.
And so you guys get out to Nebraska. It's early season. It's hot. You know, you have these expectations. DJ's already killed a deer. D-Rock's talked it all up about Nebraska, early season, all this stuff. You guys get out there. What was your experience? And what was the learning curve like hunting together and being in a tree and scouting, all that sort of stuff?
I mean, I don't know if there was much of a learning curve. Like we kind of vibed and saw, like we both like had the mentality like we got to find the deer before we're gonna kill a deer, and so like we didn't go out there really planning to sit at all until we found what we needed to find. And we got out there late in the afternoon the first day in Nebraska, landed and went straight to scouting, and we just started pounding ground. We did that all the rest of the afternoon, woke up the next day, spent that whole day pounding ground, and I think we even did it into the day after that. I remember we tallied up 20 pieces of public in Nebraska that we had walked in total throughout the trip. But, we didn't even really start hunting we threw a couple morning sits just on pieces that we were going to go scout, and so we'd get there early enough, sit it for a few hours, get down and walk the rest of the day. But yeah, fortunately we vibed on that, and Nebraska, like, we made mistakes, and but we got our opportunities, I think, from, having that, like, we're not stopping until we find it mentality. And, we found it. We found what we needed. We just blew it. So,
Yep.
it was there.
It happens to the best of us.
Right.
And so one of the things that I'm hearing, I didn't really think about it until now, and I think probably it may be what translates so well with grit to like the viewer, and I think it holds true here is that I could see in other situations where you said you guys have the same mentality. Lane is obviously a hunter. He knows what he's doing. He's looking for the same stuff. I mean, you can't. I don't think Lane could be out there in that situation and not be picking up on the sign and all that stuff. Where I don't think that it was like Cory has an ego of like, we're going to hunt my way. This is what's going on. And I think that probably holds true with the whole group of guys. Now that I'm like listening to you guys talk back and forth and all this stuff. Lane, for you, how is that being able to like not only be able to produce, the content and get the shots and do the things that you need to do, but also like be in on the conversation instead of just being bossed around? What's that like for you as a camera guy?
Yeah, man, dude, it's fun. It was a blast up with Cory, you know what I mean? Because the entire time, like, we were pretty much just bouncing ideas off each other. We'd go to a piece and like, if say like the creek like split, and there was 2 fingers of woods, like, he'd be like, dude, why don't you go down that side? I'll go down this side. We'll meet back up with the loop and see what we see. And, and yeah, that's what we did a lot. I mean, it's a lot. It's way funner not being bossed around. Just kind of like, all right, dude, I'm actually a part of this hunt instead of just being like, all right, dude, you getting a shot? You know what I mean? Dude, there's deer over here. Freaking film it. Like, It's way funner.
Yeah, and I can imagine that takes a lot of pressure off of both of you because it's like, Cory, you don't have to just be like, okay, I gotta know what I'm doing. I gotta do all this stuff, especially on new ground, where that I feel like that's the hardest part to be like, oh, I'm gonna have somebody come film me in a place that I've never been in a situation I've never been in, and like I'm the expert. So
Yeah, I think, I mean, I hope that's what comes through in the great episodes, that we're just out there. We're not trying to be the biggest deer killers in the world. Like, yes, we all want to shoot big deer, but we're out there to have fun. It's for the adventure. And on top of that, like, this stuff's really freaking hard. I mean, to go to a state way far away that you've never pre-scouted and just show up in 100-degree weather and miss the opening day, and now you're dealing with pressure and walk in and kill a deer, it's tough. And we were just trying to survive, and doing the best we could. And 100%, like, being able to, that's why I was excited Lane was coming, because it's like, A, you're hunting with a friend, which makes it enjoyable, but B, it's like, dude, like, there is so much information we have to take in a short amount of time, a very short amount of time. And, I mean, I've studying this stuff enough. Those are the guys that are killing deer on these out-of-state trips, the guys that go collect as much info as they can, as fast as they can, and make the best decisions off of that, and those decisions come from experience, and having somebody experienced in hunting like Lane was, that we can sit here and go all day, balls to the wall, scout 10 pieces, come back, lay down at night, and we're like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What about this one, Oh, well, they could be doing this at this piece. Well, we saw that sign there on the, they were bedded by the creek bed. Well, maybe we should look for more pieces that actually have a creek bed on public, and like all that stuff was going back and forth, and we're just like, we're spending a lot of time in the car too, in between spots. So like we're hit a spot, get in the car, analyze it, look at the map. Sometimes Lane's driving the car, so I can look at the map. Sometimes Lane's looking at the map when I'm driving the car. Like it's like that type of mentality. I get where you're going with like the cameraman. It's like if you had somebody that's never really hunted and never filmed hunts, that would be really hard. To like, I didn't question like Lane, we're 8 hours into the day sweating our balls off, and neither of us had a drink, and we're living off freaking gas station protein bars. Like, he was still going to get out of the car and go walk another piece with me, and it's like there was no like dragging our feet,
So Nebraska for you guys, how did that play out? And was there like a hard stop in Nebraska that you had a Airbnb booked in Kansas, so you had to be there on this day because you're paying for it, or like what was the plan or the outcome for Nebraska?
Yeah, we had booked a Airbnb until the day before opening day in Kansas. So we just kind of were going to hunt Nebraska until Kansas opened. Kansas opened on the 15th, I believe it was. So like, we were there that second week of September through basically the 15th. We were probably going to give it up and go down to Kansas. But like, we didn't really have like an Airbnb in Kansas. This was like a farmhouse extra home that this guy had, rented out, that Alex met through the grapevine. And, there's tree frogs in the bathroom, and we walked in and there's fucking just dirt and crap all over the floor. And I mean, it was like the most disgusting lodging I've ever stayed in my life, but the best lodging ever, because it was this big farm in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, overlooking this valley with horses. It was just the coolest thing in the world. It had a little bar outside, and I mean, we just
that cowboy bar. Do you remember walking in the Airbnb the first freaking day? And we're like, oh, dude, this is like
we thought we were
it's
in the
like
wrong
Motley
place.
Crue just bumping, dude, just pounding. Like we knock on the door, no one answers. So I think there was like a key or something, or maybe there was a keypad. I forget what it was. We went in. There was like wasn't like Mel in there? He was freaking standing there cleaning, dude, or doing something. And we get in there and we're like, oh, we got the right. Like it was kind of shady. Like it felt like we might even got shot. You know what I mean? But it was just wild.
He's
like, the dude's just left. Dude, remember the whole stack of just beer cans in the freaking.
Yeah.
Oh
laying in the kitchen. It was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the gist of the plan. It was stay in Nebraska, kill something. If you don't kill something by a Kansas opener, head down to Kansas and give that a go. You know, so.
Yep.
And for you, the kill something, well, you know, I talk to guys sometimes who say, you know, if you go out of state and you don't come back with something, it was a unsuccessful trip. You guys are on a very like cool like relationship type thing here where I can tell that it probably wouldn't have mattered. That wasn't like the mentality of like Nebraska. Like that wasn't going to be a failure if you didn't kill anything. You guys hunted hard, but it was kind of a big deal for you, Cory, to kind of like Uncle Frank says, right, to get one under your belt because you had just switched to shooting left-handed, you know, all of this stuff. So, you know, were you able to accomplish that like while you were in Nebraska, and like how did that play out in the decision-making process for that too?
Yeah. No, I mean, 100%. Obviously, the goal is to shoot a deer, but definitely the point of doing what we're doing is to have adventure, explore, to go somewhere you've never been, you know, run our gear, prove the concept, you know, all that stuff. And but we're trying to shoot a deer. I mean, Lane and I worked incredibly hard to shoot a buck in Nebraska, and I mean, we scoured everything we possibly could within driving distance remotely that we could get to and get back to at night. And we had gone so hard at the scouting and spent so many days trying to find everything we possibly could that we had pretty much convinced ourselves that the deer were not on the pieces we didn't think they were, and the pieces we thought they were there, and we hunted those till we basically blew it up or, you know, had our chance. And so it was like, in my opinion, in my belly, I felt like we didn't leave anything on the table. So leaving there without a deer wasn't going to be a failure in my mind because we gave it hell. That being said, when we realized, you know, we worked for probably 4 to 5 straight days to finally get a good opportunity at a buck. And that was, again, walking 20 different pieces of public before we found literally one scrape. We found one field edge scrape, and I remember we frickin' started just jumping up and down, high-fiving, yelling, like we found a scrape. But we got that spot, and we hunted that for like the next 2 days because, you know, again, we checked everything else around and hadn't found that. And this one piece had a bean field that was just lined with field edge scrapes, you know, basically a big rectangle all the way down. And so we made some. We should have been more patient. You know, we should have probably sat back, did an observation sit, saw where he was coming out, figured that out. We just dove into the biggest scrape, and we're like, you know, we got to kill him tonight. Well, we didn't have to do that, but we came out, Buck's standing on the scrape that we walked right past to go to the other scrape, and, you know, he blows at us, freaks out, and probably runs into the next, you know, probably runs to Kansas. And so we had realized, like, quickly that, you know, we had burned all our options. So it was like we were really excited to go shoot a doe. You know, it wasn't like, oh, we're defaulting to a doe. Now it's like, hell, we tried, we failed, we didn't leave anything on the table, but now it's like, let's go shoot a doe. This would be awesome. We got 2 days till we go to Kansas, and so that's what we did. And I'll tell you right now, I don't know I've ever been that excited to shoot a doe. Like, me and Lane were, you know, we got done with that. We're yelling, we're hooting and hollering. Like, it was awesome. You know, we called D-Rock, we called
Joey.
Yeah, D-Rock and Joey were both there.
Dude, they both came out, dude.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, so it somehow it ended up me alone in Nebraska with 3 guys with a camera, and Al had to go home for some family health reasons, and so yeah, I mean, it was the most documented, celebrated doe kill of all time.
Dude, it's like the sequel of doe kill, dude.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you, Lane, is like, I you know, in all of this, I forgot about the celebrating the doe kill, and because it was like, did you feel? I was going to ask you if you felt like this was like the hardest hunted doe, you know, footage that you've ever got, but it seems like in the end it was all it was all worth it just for that experience. And that's one thing that I mean, I'm glad that you guys are bringing up because, you know, I feel the exact same way. Like, I think that the celebration with your buddies, like that, you know, comparison is the thief of joy. Like, everybody wants to shoot big bucks and all this stuff, but you know, at the end of the day, like celebrating, drinking beers with your buddies, dragging a deer out, and just even the like the reaction that you guys just had here, however many months later, you know, you're gonna remember that for the rest of your life. Where, you know, some 140 that you killed by yourself, or so, you know, that looked good on Instagram, isn't gonna hold the same memory, you know, that same place in your heart as like, you know, this miserable doe kill that you you know, you scouted 20 pieces of public in Nebraska in the heat with pressure and all this other stuff, and now you got 3 cameramen on this doe recovery, you know. Like, it's hard to kind of put that in perspective for a lot of guys, really.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, if there's anything ever to take away from the Grit series, I hope that is that you know, hunting needs to be painted in a fun light too. You know, and there's a lot more. There's a lot of life lessons to be learned from it. There's a lot of experience to be gained from it. There's a lot of good that comes from it. You know, the whole conservation side. There's so much more to it than shooting big deer. And even though shooting big deer is everybody's goal, you know. But I'll tell you right now, like the out-of-state hunting trips, unsuccessful or successful, being a hunter or being a cameraman are the biggest core memories I've had of my life in the last 4 years, you know. And they're ones I'm going to carry for a long time and build some of my best friendships from it. It's something I'd recommend to anybody, even if it's small, you know, even if you can't afford to go to Nebraska or you don't have your work paying for a Airbnb, like go find a camp 2 hours from your house with your buddies and go in October when it's still warm enough to sleep in a tent, and sleep in a tent for the weekend and hunt for 3 days, you know, take a Friday off, hunt through Sunday and go home. It's worth it, man. It's a lot of fun. And I'd rather burn my tags shooting smaller deer, hanging out with my friends, than saving them to shoot a big deer by myself that no one actually really cares about. So, I don't know. Just kind of been my take on it.
Yeah.
So with that, like, you shoot the doe, you're all right, it's time to go to Kansas. You check into Tree Frog Terrace and you're trying to figure out, like, what do you do now? Like, what did you learn in Nebraska that you applied to Kansas, or did you have a plan for Kansas and just go and apply that plan?
I mean, I would say our plan in Nebraska, outside of we didn't come home with a buck, worked. I mean, we scouted our butts off until we found the deer, found the pieces the deer were on, or we thought they were on, and hunted those pieces. And I would say the one mistake we made in Nebraska is we didn't read this. You know, it sounds silly, but like we didn't read the situation on the pressure. In my opinion, like I was so antsy. I got antsy because we had worked so hard and spent all week trying to find a good scrape or an area we thought was holding a buck, and we just dove right in. And immediately that bit us in the butt. I mean, we blew that opportunity. Now, we probably had a decent chance to kill him. We were in a good spot. You know, he was there. But had we sat back that night and just realized, like, hey, we haven't seen anybody even remotely around here. Like, no one's going to come down this piece. Like, let's just sit back on the other side of the field and watch him. Where's he going to come out? And had we probably done that, we probably could have gone back in there the next night and killed him. And we probably should have treated that situation a little more gingerly, because it was the only piece we had found with buck sign. And so it's like, man, we worked really hard to find this, and we blew it up really quick. And so that was, you know, we talked about that a lot in the car. It was like, man, like if we get an opportunity in Kansas, we need to make it count, you know. I'd say that was the lesson I felt like I took away. I don't know what you think, Lane, but that's kind of
I think
was it.
Yeah, I think it was like patience, you know what I mean, too. Like just sitting back and just watching and kind of understanding before we just dive right in and go balls deep at this thing, you know what I mean? But you never know, you know. I mean, it could have worked out the first night, but it didn't. You know, we ended up screwing the pooch on it, you know. But
So, I guess when I went to Kansas, I had like a goal in mind. Okay, I want to shoot a buck. I want to shoot a buck that I can't just shoot easily in Michigan. Like it would be like a trophy for me. Um, I feel like I, I feel like you had said earlier you didn't have like a whole lot of pressure or anything like that, but I feel like again like it seems like almost like an impossible spot because you know Alex is killing giant deer. It seems like on every trip, and he's passing deer that I know that I would shoot. And especially you guys just got your butts kicked in Nebraska as far as bucks go. What was your goal as far as like deer score, size, or was it just like read the situation and see?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely read the situation and see, but like, I know Lane and I had conversations about let's try to be a little picky, you know. We were, every day we joked like, Nebraska's the standard started off at 140 and then it was 130, and then by like 4 hours of scouting, I think it was down to like 115. So, um, it plummeted quick, and that's all right. But yeah, Kansas, we had preliminarily said we were gonna be picky, or not picky, but try to shoot a good deer. And I think had we been in a situation on the ground with a 120-inch buck, we probably would have shot him. And now that being said, like Alex came to Kansas with us and then went back to Kansas, and that was kind of always the plan. That like if we didn't have success early season, we go back during the rut. So that was the mindset to try to be a little picky, that we are going to come back during the rut. And so it's like, maybe we shouldn't try to shoot the first 100-inch buck we see because, we got more time. Really was the only hold up on it.
And then what was your timeline in Kansas? Like how long did you plan on being there?
We had a week at the Airbnb. So it was a 2-week stint. We just, 7 days in Nebraska, 7 days in Kansas. And fortunately, since we shot that deer in Nebraska, Nebraska, I believe, is just a one deer state. You don't, buck or doe, whatever you fill your tag with, that's your tag, and for an out-of-state license. And so once I shot that doe, we were done. It wasn't like we could stay there and shoot a buck or buy another antler tag. And so, and Al had to go home. So we went straight to Kansas, which was the blessing that we needed. That we got there 2 days before season started, or 2 nights before season, and allowed us that day to not be hunting and to go scout and wait for season to start. Which if there ever was a out of state tactic I could recommend, that would be it. Like if you're gonna go somewhere for an opener, get there 2 days before the opener and just go see what's going on. The amount of times I've got to somewhere on opening day and then you feel that like subconscious pressure of I need to be hunting because it's legally you're allowed to be hunting, it eats you alive. Where when you have that like mentality of no matter what I do, I have to scout today because I can't bring my bow in there. It's always helped. It's helped on every trip we've ever done that on. Just get a lay of the land.
Yeah, so go through that. You get to Kansas. You have a pretty specific, size of deer because you're able to come back. So you guys go scout. What kind of pieces are you looking at? What's the tactic? I mean, because if guys are listening to this and they're familiar with latitude, they're familiar with grit, they've seen, some of the Kansas hunts where they're way far away, they're doing all this glassing. That was the tactic with Derek and Jake. And then, I hunted one of the pieces that Lane hunted, and that was definitely not Lane's tactics. So, like, there's a whole nother, way to hunt Kansas, depending on like what units you have and whatnot. So, what were you guys? What was the plan going in there?
The plan was still similar to Nebraska. That we had map scouted. Both Lane and I were map scouting, picking pieces everywhere, and we had 10 to 15 of them picked out. And that first day, we got down there early enough in the afternoon that we could drive around a lot of them. And so we spent pretty much that night just trying to glass as much as we could. And we didn't see many deer. Like, I don't even think we saw a deer. And we probably drove around for 4 hours in kind of like rolly hill country. And we just didn't have a lot of luck with it. And so the next morning, we went to just the totally opposite terrain of glassing. We're like, hey, well, like, this didn't work in the afternoon. Let's go glass. And that's when we first saw the big deer, where we were able to actually glass in the morning. But we did spend the rest of that day back in egg country scouting as much as we could. I mean, the biggest thing we were trying to do is put as many cards in our favor as we could. You know, it's like we found one deer, he went and laid down. Well, let's go find as many backup plans as fast as we possibly can, and not just sink all our eggs in this basket here. So we covered a lot. I mean, we glassed a ton. We scouted that whole day, glassed again that night, and we didn't see anything. And so it was like, you know, we kind of like had our, you know, we glassed, we saw a buck, and it was like, well, we've exhausted a lot of other options, and nothing's even remotely coming into fruition. So it's like, let's just go focus on that guy, you know.
And so take us through that hunt, because if people haven't listened to any of the other podcasts, or they haven't like heard the story of this deer, maybe they've seen the pictures, but the story is crazy just because of the way that it played out, and the two of you, the being the way that it went. You know, we think about some of this stuff as being like two guys in a tree, you know, cameraman over the shoulder, and that's not exactly how it went.
Yeah, I mean, Lane, it was the whole morning before opening day that we saw him first, right? And then
Yeah.
we see him that morning. That afternoon, after we had scouted, we came back there to glass to see if we could see him in the evening. Lane picks him up through the binos, coming out of the same area we watched him go to bed.
Yep.
You know, so now it's like we got him twice, you know, morning and afternoon. The one thing we didn't want to do, though, is like just dive back in there the next morning and blindly sit up, because we had never walked down into this piece. We just sat back and glassed it, saw he was in there, and we're like, all right, like, let's just get out of here. He's there. So we didn't want to just walk in the dark, blindly pick a tree where we thought he was maybe bedding, and probably mess the whole thing up. So we didn't hunt that morning. We sat there. We got in our glassing knobs, and you know, the night before and the morning before, we sat on the same knob, and then the next day we split up so we could see more. You know, and for whatever reason, we didn't see him. He, you know, best thing we could guess is either he got back to bed before daylight, or the way he was walking back to bed was in such these like neck-high grasses, basically, and thickets, that we were missing him. But it was freaking awesome. We were getting out there before daybreak, and we're both on our two knobs, and all I could think about is like, you know, any of the sniper movies overseas. Like, I'd like see Lane in the distance crest his hill and stand up when we get done glassing. You know, all I can see is his silhouette coming down the ridge, and we'd meet back up and walk back to the truck. I mean, it was just epic sunrises and cool stuff. Yeah. But we kind of realized, like, quickly, though, that, you know, we're sitting on our only opportunity, and we had just learned the lesson of Nebraska. Like, we need to, like, take our time and make this one count. And so, again, it's opening morning. We skipped hunting and just went to glass, and he came back out that afternoon. We glassed again in the afternoon because we didn't see him in the morning. Came right back out of that same bed. And so it was kind of like, well, hey, even though we missed him in the morning, he still got there. You know, he went back to the same bed on the same wind 2 days in a row. And so now it's the third day. It's the second day of season. And we go to glass him again in the morning. We don't see him again, but we got the same wind. And I mean, we talked about that for a while, Lane, of like, you know, what do? We didn't see him. But, again, we didn't see him the day before, and he came out of that bed. So, just kind of was like, you know, we both, I think, felt like it's time to roll the dice. You know, if he does this the third day in a row, we're either going to kill him or blow it up. But I don't want to be the guy to wait for him to do it a fourth day and him not
Yeah.
be there, you know.
So, just for people listening who maybe haven't seen this or anything like that, like how big of a deer are we talking about? And then when you're setting up, you're glassing, you're doing all this stuff, and you're set up on a deer a couple days in a row now. What are you seeing for pressure? Are you worried about other hunters? Are you worried about people seeing your vehicle? Does any of that come into play? But like, what size deer are we talking about?
Well, I think Lane and I went back and forth on how big he was probably 100 times. But
Dude, when we first
um,
seen him in that field at like 900 yards away, I was like, oh yeah, dude, that's like a good 120-inch buck, dude, all day long. Corey's like, yeah, well, maybe we'll shoot him, I don't know. And then he stepped out of bed that first night, and we're like, dude, I think that's a little bit bigger than 120, you know what I mean? But you never want to be the dude who's like, oh, that's a 180-inch deer, you know what I mean? It turns out to be like a 140-inch deer, you know what I mean? So, like,
we had watched him enough. We knew he was bigger than, but neither of us wanted to be the guy to say, "Oh, that's a 180-inch buck." You know, we were just like, he's mid 50s, 140s. I don't know,
maybe high
and
30s.
right.
Dude, but we never got good, clean looks at him either. I mean, like, we saw him in the binos, but he was always so freaking far away. And then, like, every time I remember you got that little phonoscope mount. Dude, every single time we tried to use it, something would happen. I remember, like, the storage on my phone kept being filled, or, like, just some stupid shit would happen, dude. Oh, man.
We finally got, like, enough of him, like, that we're, like, watching it back, and you could see he turns his head, and you'd be like, that looked like a lot of tines. But it was also, like, we're filming him from 1,000 yards away, and it's like, is it just the video's like a little delayed and maybe it's blurry and it's the same time, And so we sat there, we watched that, and like I think in the back of both of our heads we're like, this is a pretty big deer, but neither of us want to be the guy to say that's a really big deer. And but we knew it was 100% like we need to go try to shoot this. This is a big deer, situation. We just didn't know the scale. We ended up scoring him at like 185. So. Scored him a few times, sometimes a little bigger, sometimes a little smaller. Still got to get him officially scored, but he's comfortable mid-80s, and just big, cool deer, man.
Dude, I'll never forget that deer when he freaking was in that brush, and then he turned and he was at like 15 yards from us. Dude, that was like just that's like just what you dream of, dude. You know what I mean? Like, all the years of going to Cabela's, like, the dream country or whatever, the big tax, dude, that's all I thought about the entire. When he turned his head and I just seen times, I was like, oh my God, dude. Like, what a freaking buck, dude.
Yeah.
So what were you worried about with, like, pressure? Like I say, like, when you guys are parking out, you're set up on this deer, you're going back and forth about how big he is, and in both your minds, he's a pretty good deer. Are you worried about pressure coming from Nebraska where there was some pressure?
We probably should have been more worried than we were, but like, after you sit on the same piece and glass it for 3 straight days, morning and night, you get a pretty good gauge of, what's going on. And we didn't see anybody on this piece. And we were walking, north of a mile just to get to where we were glassing, just before you even can see where we were trying to hunt. So, being that it's opening day and the second day of season, by that point, like and it was 93 degrees, like, there probably was some pressure around, but we weren't seeing it there. It was pretty far back there, and we were we were a little worried about it, but we were pretty confident that, like, this was our situation to make happen or blow it up. So, we didn't see anybody at that particular spot, which was nice.
Yeah, I feel like anything you can do to just nix that pressure, like putting miles on or like getting water access or just anything you do just helps out tremendously. You know what I mean? So I think that's what really helped us too. Because it seemed like a lot of the easy pieces were getting pounded in Kansas too. Like, remember driving by and you'd see like a couple trucks out of pieces that weren't that big, and then like this piece, I mean, it was huge, and dude, there was never a car there.
and it didn't look good. Like
No, it didn't look
you
good at
would look
all.
at it on
Remember
the
the
map
whole
and you're like,
tops and like, yeah,
yeah.
it didn't even look that
It
good to
looked
be honest
like
with you.
barren wasteland up top. Like you had to really
Yeah,
get into it before you started even finding terrain that like looked huntable,
yeah.
So so you guys glass this deer. You didn't want to wait for him to do this the fourth time. Like, when was the decision made to be like, okay, we're gonna go in and hunt him today?
I think right after we glassed in the morning and didn't see him, we
Mm-hmm.
just kind of got back and it was like, he did this the night before. We're gonna go do it. So we immediately just went back to the house. We might have took a 20, 30-minute nap and got ready. And um, I, so I had, I switched my bow, obviously the left-hander before we left for Nebraska. And I ran up to the store and got 6 arrows because my arrows that I was shooting right-handed didn't work for my left-handed bow. And so I only had 6 arrows to start this whole trip, and I just started shooting left-handed. We shot a deer with one in Nebraska. I think I lost one in Nebraska. And somehow by the time we got to Kansas, I had like maybe 3 arrows or 4 arrows, and Lane and I had stopped up on this ridge, parked the truck, and we're like, we're gonna shoot, but the winds are just screaming, and I'm like sitting up there, my bow's like doing this, and I'm like, this is not good. I missed the target twice and lost 2 arrows, so now we're down to I think we had 2 arrows, didn't we, Lane? That was it.
I don't think you missed the target on the one. I think it just blew right through the target. To
Yeah,
be
yeah.
honest with you.
We're shooting our broadheads at this beat up target, and they're just zipping through and going down this Kansas dirt road in the middle of nowhere and just gone forever. And so we had I think we had 2 arrows. We had the one I shot the doe with
Yeah.
and one other good arrow. And so we went back to the house, got ready, and we shot in the backyard just to make sure one last time like we're good. And it worked, and we ate a little bit of lunch and just left like way early. And we were driving hour and a half to the spot. It wasn't like we were right down the road where we were staying. So we got out there as early as we could, and we knew we had a hell of a walk in front of us because again, it was a mile plus just to get where we were glassing from, and once we got to where we were glassing, we still had a long ways to get to him. So we tried to get there as early as possible and just give ourselves time. And he had been getting up pretty much that last half hour of light, and he did give or take a little bit both nights before. And the first night when Lane first saw him, if I remember right, he came down and went left. So like he comes down this hill, he takes a left. The second night he came down the hill, he took a right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had, fortunately, the time we spent glassing the next day, I could sit there when I moved over onto the point as close to him as we could get. And we didn't see him, but I probably spent 2 hours sitting there with my binos just looking where he walked. And it's like, all right, the night before he walked this, he turned left here. The night before he walked this, he turned right there. And it's like, all right, well, this tree's kind of right about where he turns, and this patch of thickness is pretty much what we know we need to be in. And, whatever way he's going to go, we should try to get a chance at him. And so we, without actually stepping foot down there, we had spent several hours looking at it on maps and several hours glassing it to determine a plan of attack and really a plan of where we needed to be waiting for him. And we came back the night before and drew up our big loop of how we were going to get in there on the right wind. And I mean, basically how it was playing out is he was bedded windward. And, traditionally in like a hill country, they talk about bedding leeward. He was bedded blatantly windward. And I don't know essentially why. Maybe it was more so with the cow pasture area up top that there wasn't much of a threat to him coming from the top, that he was just more so wanting all that scent from the bottom to be blowing up to him, because that's kind of what was going on. And so we kind of realized that, and unfortunately though, like where we had picked glassing to try to kill him was right underneath him, where the wind's basically blowing right up to him. And so that kind of made our mind up that we need to go all the way out and around and come back into that wind as much as we could to stay. Like if he's bedded at 12 o'clock on a clock, our wind was going to 11, and we were sitting at, kind of almost center of the clock, but maybe more towards a 9, And so we were risking it a lot, but he was there using that wind, and we were just trying to exploit anything we could to use it against him. But that's kind of how it determined our big looping path, was where he was sitting and where the wind was coming.
And so in doing that, like how long, because, you know, if guys don't know, Jake, Cory did a lot of hunting with Jake Bush, and Jake Bush is like one of these guys who will take 3 hours to get into a spot no matter what time of year. And here you guys are, you said 93 degrees earlier, so it's super hot. You said you went in super early, so we're talking middle of the day. You're talking giant grass field, so it's not like you're in the shade or anything like that. How long did it take you to get set up? And then, like for you, Lane, like and Cory both, but for this, like trying to film this as a almost like a spot and stalk, because that I'm imagining you're not just running in there, having to do this. Like, what is your experience with spot and stalk and filming and a buck of this caliber? I mean, there's a like I keep talking about like pressure, but I'm just thinking about like how I would feel about it.
Well, at this point, we still didn't even know he was the buck of this caliber, to be honest with you. Like, but I mean, I don't know, man. It's just like hunting, you know. I don't know. Like, there wasn't really much pressure, you know. Like, there was a little pressure, but it wasn't like. It never felt to me like, oh my god, dude, this is a freaking job, and I can't. It's just like, it was never like that. It was just like, all right, dude, I'm hunting with my buddy, and I got a camera in my hand, and I'm freaking filming it, you know. So, just try to tell the story as best as possible, film as much as possible, you know, and I don't know. We probably got in there. We probably started walking at like, what do you think, Cory? Like 12:30, 12 o'clock. Like it was early, and we probably were underneath of them at like 2:30, something like that. You know, so maybe 3, and just freaking we just sat there until the thermal switched, and then slowly made our mark. You know.
Yeah, it was so. You know, it's still just early mid-September. You know, it's getting dark at like 8 o'clock at night, and so he was coming down. We were seeing him was 7:30. You know, it's like pretty late in the evening. You get there at noon. That's like 7.5 hours before you're gonna see this deer. You know, and it's hot as balls, and we didn't bring near enough water. I was like dying out there, and Lane's like making sure I'm still awake. But um, you know, we started that loop at probably 12:30. Probably got to the parking lot around noon, and you know, it took us a good 2 hours to get all the way down and around, and then the last, you know, we had a field to cross, and that's kind of right when we slowed down because we bumped a bunch of does like across the field, and right where we had first saw this buck, the very first morning, he made a scrape on that field edge, and that's right where we had got to, and we bumped a bunch of does out of there, which it kind of all started making sense. Like he put this scrape right outside the doe bedding. But we blew that up. We got a little nervous, like, man, did we just, you know, ruin the situation? They blew at us pretty hard and ran out of there, but the wind was just screaming so hard that we were pretty confident he couldn't hear it. And so we got to we spent some time glassing, slowed down, found where we needed to cross this field, and we lined up the trees. You know, if we thought he was bedded up top, we found a tree that lined up right between that, you know, because it's still green up. These trees are still covering a lot of area, and we just put ourselves in line with that and walked a straight line as fast as we could to get across the field to be on the same side of the field that he was bedded on. And by the time we got there, you know, we stopped, put some knee pads on, like really slowed down, and basically just crawled our way up this road, you know. But we, you know, probably took 2.5 hours to get to the final 200 yards we were trying to cover, but then it probably took 3 hours to cover 200 yards. And, you know, we finally got up into the grass area where we wanted to be and slowed down. That was probably 5:30. So, you know, it took 2 hours to go 2 miles, and then it took 3 hours to go 200 yards. So it was hurry up and wait situation.
And with all this, you know, time spent, fatigue, blowing these deer out, like mentally, like what's going through your mind? Like, how do you persevere? You know, I mean, I think it's like, you know, the guys that talk about like the bump and dump and all this other stuff. Like, you know, you're dying of heat stroke. You don't have any water. All of these things are coming into play. Now you blow these does out. They blow at you. You make it across this field. Like, talk about like your mentality, like in that, and even like, because you guys are both, I mean, Cory's the hunter, Lane's the cameraman in the thing. Like, so for you, Cory, like, what's going through your mind as each of these things are happening? Like, what keeps you going through the situation?
Yeah, I mean, I've spent a lot of my life, like I think anybody listening to this podcast, dreaming of shooting a big deer, and a lot of time listening to podcasts, trying to learn, hunting as hard as I could, failing, missing deer, all that stuff. And it's like, I finally felt like we were in a situation that we had a really big deer and we're able to make a play on him. And I think anybody that bow hunts enough knows that's not a very common thing that happens. And so we were just locked in, man. It was like kind of like, hey, we got our opportunity. Like let's not mess it up. And we just kind of locked in. And I mean, I'm not kidding. When we crawled down that road and we started getting into this big switchgrass, and I mean, we were very, as clumsy as we probably were, we felt like we were being very tactful. We were waiting till the wind blew. When the wind picked up enough, I mean, we talked about that before we had got there. Like the point of getting there midday was, we knew we were going to be early, but the wind was the strongest midday. And so if we could get in there with the strongest winds, we could have the most cover noise. And so we got to the switchgrass as early as we could, and when the wind would blow hard, we'd move forward. And I mean, we ended up having to crawl through an old barbed wire fence and just all kinds of stuff that was freaking us out. And, we got through there, and really it just kind of, I don't know, like I think we both just were so like mentally in the zone that we felt like we were in this big box bedroom that like we just were dialed in and didn't have phone service. So there was nothing else to do but kill this thing, And so we're sitting out there, and we finally got to where we were, we crossed that fence, and where we had been glassing and seeing that he was splitting, is now probably a good 120, 150-ish yards from where we kind of chilled out. And we spent a lot of time, like, just kind of looking around and going back and forth, like, all right, can we get here? Can we get there? And, Lane would sit there, and he'd kind of peek his head up and scan around, like, all right, what do you think of this? And then I'd go crawl over there and, all right, we can see this, we can't see that, crawl back and talk about it. So, I mean, we spent a lot of time just trying to make sure we were making the right decision, because, the reality was we watched him split and go one of two ways the day before. And if we picked the wrong one, we're going to be the guy with the big fish story that got away, and we got that close and all this. So we analyzed it hard for a while, and we were as locked in as I think we could be.
And so you, Lane, during this, like same thing, you're no water, no food, like my employer, this is unsafe conditions. Like, I can't believe they'd put me in this. Like, I'm going to the union.
I've been way worse situations than that, but trust me, that was nothing.
But you blow out these does and all this stuff. All of these things are coming into play. Like for you, like you're not the hunter. You're the camera guy. I mean, you're hunting with your buddy. All these things. Like, what's your mentality going through this?
Dude, I just want to see him kill some, dude. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to screw this up for him, pretty much, Yeah, I was just, I don't know, man. It's just, you know how you are when you get in the zone, dude. Like, you're just so locked in on what the task is. And the task at hand right now is to kill that deer, So that's just what our mentality was, dude.
So, Cory, for you, like in this situation, and like I said, I'm trying, like, from a listener standpoint, trying to talk about like the perseverance and all this stuff, because there's lots of guys who would not subject themselves to that, and then all these things, the heat, the blowing the deer out, whatever. Do you think that you would have done everything the same way, or you would have been in the same mentality, same mindset if you were out there solo?
I probably would have been in a similar mindset. I mean, I can tell you 100%, like having Lane there was a massive help. I mean, having somebody to bounce ideas off of in the woods keeps you sane. You know, hunting's I've talked about this before, it's an emotional, when you start talking about big deer and you start talking about something you really care about and like care about bow hunting, like I think a lot of people listening to this podcast probably do, and you exhaust a ton of energy thinking about it, trying to learn it, trying to get better at it, a ton of money and time away from your family, going out and doing all this, like it becomes an emotional, stressful thing at times when it probably shouldn't be, but it does. And, you know, like trying to keep a clear head during something like that and like having somebody you can rely on to talk to through all that is massive. I mean, we talked through every situation we could, you know, it's like, all right, well, what if we can get 60 yards in front of us here, you know, and what does that do for us? Did we get a better shot opportunity or not? Like, what if we go backwards and get all the way behind the thicket and try to catch him when he gets down the hill? Like, is that a good idea or not? Is it a 60-yard shot or is it going to be a 20-yard shot? And so like we're just weighing every option as best we can, being that we've not stepped foot in this, we've just glassed it. You know, we're kind of almost scouting and figuring it out all at the same time. So, yeah, I mean, I would say we locked in and kept as clear and as well thought out plan as we could, and we executed on it. I mean, where we killed the deer, we had drawn up. You know, we had taken screenshots from glassing and literally took a marker on our phones and drew up where we were going to be standing, where he was going to be walking, and where our shots were going to be. Like we thought about that, and we had the time to think about that. But, you know, so we had confidence because we had thought about it so much, I guess. And we had confidence because we had just spent 10 days busting our butts through the woods together and hunting together, and we had gotten to a rhythm. And we realized we were on the same page, and it was, we finally just hit the state that we were kind of just flowing, you know, and it was time to kill the deer, and we got in there pretty damn close to him, you know. I think by the time we stopped, we were probably sub 100 yards easy from where he was actually laying down, and you know, we did. I mean, we talked about this one for a while. We had a decision to make. Like, this thicket, it was either we're going to be on the right of it or we're going to be on the left of it. We chose to be on the left of it. And that worked out, but it almost didn't work out. You know, so he came down, you know, I mean, I guess we can back up a little bit, but we finally made our mind up to try to get to the front edge of the thicket so that where he was splitting, we were going to shoot him, you know, like, that way we took the risk of him going the wrong way and out of it. And so what we did is we started just like plowing this switchgrass down and just trying to scoot forward as much as we could. And we got, you know, maybe 50 yards from where we were set up, and we finally started breaking sticks because you couldn't see the sticks under. I mean, you got chest tag grass and you're plowing through, and you, as slow as you could rock your feet, you know, you're rocking your feet as slow as you can, trying to feel that pressure and pull your foot back out before the stick snaps. But sometimes we just weren't seeing them. And finally, we would just kind of popped a few. And I remember looking back at Lane, and we're both like, I mean, it was just like that stick pop you felt like in your soul, like, fuck, that might have been the one he heard. And we finally had to stop. You know, we got so far into it and we were making so much noise that we were like, man, like, we're going to bust this. And at that point, you know, it's 6:15-ish, or no, probably 7:15-ish. I think we shot him 7:30. We didn't have time to go to the other side. You know, it was a done deal. We're on the left side, and we're committed to the left side. And where he was splitting was probably, I mean, what do you think it was, Lane? 50 yards from where we stopped.
I was gonna say a little bit more, dude. I was gonna say like probably 80 yards, to be honest with you. Because I remember thinking if he walks down that road like he did the day before, dude, you're gonna have like an 80-yard bomb shot on this thing.
It was a poke.
Yeah, it was a
poke.
But I mean, that's all we could do, though. That's as close as what we could get without probably blowing up. You know how it is. Like you never know. So like, yeah, it's just like one of them things. You know, that's where we were. So that's what we had to deal with. But luckily, we didn't even need to.
And so
Yeah.
who first spots the deer? Like, so you get there, you're, 50, 80 yards away. You decide
Yeah.
you can't go any further. Like, when's the first time that you guys
Yeah.
are validated in everything that you've done?
Well,
I think
Lane
I
saw him.
spotted him
Yeah.
first. Yeah, I think he
I
stepped out on the logging road. There was a bit. Remember that big? I don't know what kind of tree it was, but there was a big ass tree there, and he popped. I just seen like a deer body, and I was like, "Oh, dude! Oh my god! Yeah, that's a buck. That's a good buck, you know." And then I remember being like, "All right, Cory, I think he's here. I think he's coming right down the thing." And then you were like, "Oh, I see him. I see him now." And you're like, I think he's coming to the right." And we're like we're looking, and then we're like on this tree line, right? So it kind of dips down. We're like set right on this edge of this tree line, and it's it's not a real big tree line at all. It's maybe what, Cory, like 20, 30 yards if that, and it kind of dips down and then goes up, and on the other side there's a field edge. What that deer did was he instead of coming across the logging road, or not the logging road, but across the road up top in front of us, he came down the side to the right of us. And I remember seeing him out of we lost him for like 5-10 minutes, dude. And then remember I was just like, "Oh, dude, he's right here." He was at like 30 yards on the opposite side of the trees, just cutting down right to us. And then there was actually
moving.
yeah, he was moving real fast.
He
And
was
then
moving.
remember, like, I was like, "Oh, dude," I was like, "We got to spin around to kill this thing." Because at the end of the tree line we were on, there was a little opening, and then that fence line, and then like the main ag field where he was actually going to, like, every single night we assume, you know. So I was like, "Dude, we gotta freaking creep down there and try to get like right in that cut so you can shoot him." And I remember you like, dude, you moved. We stood up. You moved real fast to my right. I remember taking like 5-6 steps and being like, "All right, I don't really want to screw this up for you." I'm like, if I screw this up, I'm gonna feel like it's a straight asshole. You know, we're so close already. But I remember you were in front of me at like, I'm looking down towards the ag field now. The buck's on my left side, and he was last I seen him. He was coming down towards Cory. I thought Cory was gonna have like 20-yard, 30-yard chip shot at this thing, but I was also nervous because, dude, where I was, there was no way in hell I would have been able to see that deer. Like, I was pretty much just filming you. And then all of a sudden, I remember like you being like, "Dude, you see him? Where's he at?" And I mean, this whole thing feels like it's probably 30 minutes when in reality it's probably like, you know how it is. It's probably less than 2 minutes. All this stuff's going on. And then I just remember catching movement in my peripheral on my left side. And dude, he came into the tree line and went down into the bottom of the tree line. So now we're like kind of up above him. And I mean, dude, he's at like 15 yards away from me. And I just see freaking tines, dude. And he's like, at first he came right to me, and then he turned, and he was actually cutting back up the way he came. But he was eating this bush. And I remember just being like, "Cory, he's right here, dude. He is right freaking here." And then, dude, I was like, Cory, and I was kind of waving to you, dude, and you freaking come up. And dude, I was filming him, and I like, grass is so tall, and he's below me, so I'm filming him above my head. So I'm trying to pay attention to the camera, you know. So I can't really see what Cory's doing. And dude, Cory comes. I just remember like looking like back where Cory was, and here he comes to the side of me, dude. And he's at full draw, just like creeping right to me, dude, just creeping. And then he gets to like, I don't know, like, I don't know how far away you were from me, maybe like 20 yards, 15 yards, something like that, and you undraw. And then I think yeah, dude, and then I think you seen him on the camera screen, or you were like, "Dude, do you see him?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude, like, camera screen. You looked on the viewfinder, seen him, and then you're like, "All right, dude, you crept up, and you were probably like, what, 5 yards behind me, and I seen you draw back again." And the entire time, like, the deer kind of, every time, like, Cory takes a step, like, he kind of looks, and then I'd like give hand signals to Cory, like, "Stop." And then he would go back to feet. I'm like, "All right, come on. You know what I mean?" And then Cory draws back again, and I'm like, "Dude, I just don't think you have a great shot right here at all." And I was like, "Cory, just take your time, bud. You undraw. Dude, you get up in front of me now." So now he's at like probably 10 yards of this freaking buck, dude. Yeah, man, it was awesome.
And so for you, Cory, during this whole thing, how is this going through your mind?
I mean, it was utter chaos. We were like, it was chaos. I mean, we tactfully, I mean, kind of what also, I forgot to mention this, what made up our mind kind of be on the left side of the trees is that's the downwind side. And we had sat there, and this coyote had came in on us place is loaded with coyotes. Kansas in general was loaded with coyotes. And this coyote walked in on us, and we had no idea, and got to like 5 yards of us and just bound out of there. Had no idea, didn't smell us at all. And so we realized quickly, like, the wind's blowing so hard that anything upwind of us wasn't going to smell us. And so when he came down and, like, we realized he's going the other way, it was like, we had nothing to lose. You know, we had to make a move, and if we didn't make a move, we were just going to watch him walk off and it'd be done. So that was, you know, we realized quickly we need to go. And so literally, like, Lane's sitting there filming, and I'm just stalking my way down that tree line. We're just trying to cut him off at the other end, you know, at this point. Well, I had made my way all the way back down there by the time we realized he came back in the thicket with Lane. And I just remember Lane's face, like, when he first, like, realized he was there. It, like, define I saw a ghost, you know, that was like, I'm like, oh my God, he's standing 15 yards from Lane, you know. And so I'm, like, stalking all the way back up, and I'm watching where Lane's pointing the lens of the camera, because, you know, I'm like, that's got to be where the deer is. And so literally I'm just walking full draw, you know, slowly stalking as fast as I could, but as slow as I could to, you know, get up there. And fortunately, by the time we did almost get busted. Like, he stared straight into our soul, and I mean, it scared the crap out of me. But again, he couldn't smell us, and we were so far into his bedroom and in his little bubble that, like, I literally think he couldn't believe that there was a human in there. You know, we had crawled in so tight that it was like, you know, he does this every day of his life. There's no way something got underneath him. The wind's blowing at him. Like, you could tell how confident he felt. But again, like that, he was doing that head turn. When he would come, he would look up, and then he'd swing back to this branch to start eating, and, like, you could just see the tines go. And it was just like, you know, I could feel Lane's heart. I'm sure he could feel my heart. And we're sitting there, like, freaking out, and took those last few steps, and we shot him. I mean, I was 15 yards or closer probably by the time I actually shot him. And when we did look back at the footage, the whole encounter was 15 minutes of this going on. So it's like, I mean, the adrenaline had reached so high that, you know, we're beyond the point of return. You know, we're both about to have a heart attack. We shoot this thing, and we're like, oh God, like, it was like one of those, like, unforgettable pops, you know, like, boom. And we watch him mule kick, he runs, and, like, we both kind of just, like, scurry up, you know, like, we're moving this whole time. And I think that's honestly what kept us under control. You know, it's kind of like we're not tied to one tree, where, you know, I think that nervousness in hunting comes a lot from that, when you're anchored to a tree and you realize your whole fate's at where this deer's going to walk, where this was the one time our fate was not in necessarily where the deer's going to walk. We could actually make a move and make a play. And I think that kept us calm, because we were kind of still making decisions and taking action. And, you know, we shot him, and then I think it all set in, and we ran up and thought he was going to, you know, run off or run away, and he just literally topples at 25 yards right in front of us. And I remember just turning around the lane, and we just lost our frickin' minds. I ran on the hand, tackled him, and, you know, we're screaming, yelling, like, my binos fall off, I frickin' lose my release, you know, we're just throwing stuff everywhere, and it was the coolest frickin' thing in the world, man.
Dude, that was awesome. Yeah, that release is still laying in that field in Kansas somewhere, dude.
Yep.
Oh.
It was
And
good.
so this all plays out. 15 minutes probably felt like 4 hours. You shoot him. It's every bow hunter's dream, right? You shoot this deer and he dies right there. Like, there is no tracking. You don't have to second guess anything. You don't have to do anything. You know, he's right there. You guys celebrate. What was it like when you went over and, like, got up to the deer, got up to your, you know, 120s to mid 50s, you know, Kansas buck?
We were just speechless. The only way I can describe it to you is, like, you know, I don't think this is exactly what happened, but you know how, like, they talk about how trauma, like, changes your brain, you know, when you go through a traumatic experience, like, your brain hits it changes your brain physically. You know, it's like an alcoholic. You know, you drink enough beer, your brain literally changes. I felt like we went through that almost. Like our adrenaline had gotten so high, and this encounter lasted so long, and we had been at this for so many days that it was like I felt like we were in this surreal world. You know, it was like, how is this actually unfolding? Did this actually really just happen? You know, like I mean, we're kind of staring at each other like, holy crap, you know, and on top of that, realizing, you know, thinking he's a big deer to actually now knowing and seeing he's a big deer, and then seeing him at 15 yards and watching a 185-inch buck stand there for 15 minutes in front of you, turning his head, eating like, and having no idea you're there. I mean, my heart was like erupting, and you know, we finally calmed down, and you know, I called my wife, we called Derek, we called Al, like we just frickin' soaked it all in, man, and it was just
dude, it was wild, dude. Like I just remember Cory. You know, it's different for me because like I'm trying to watch everything. Like as a camera dude, you're watching everything through the viewfinder. You know what I mean? So like necessarily, I didn't see the shot. Like I heard the pop, and then I remember being like, oh my god, or like I said something so stupid though. And then freaking, I remember Cory running up, and I hear him crash, and then Cory's face, dude, just looked at me, and then he freaking tackled me, and just being like, oh man, it was unreal, man. It was just like, it felt, yeah, like you said, dude, it just felt like surreal, like all the freaking everything that we just went through for the past 2 weeks, you know, just freaking, it was crazy, man. It was awesome.
yeah.
When you do something like that, even for you, Lane, as well, like how do you follow that up? I mean, I know, you know, I killed a 150-inch buck on public in Ohio, and I just feel like it's going to be really difficult to replicate. Like, it doesn't even enter into my mind that, like, when I enter into the woods, that's going to be my, you know, some people are like, well, I'm not going to shoot a buck until I, you know, shoot one bigger than the last one I got. Like, that's going to be a very, very tough feat and even the hunt, the story, everything. You know, we talked about the doe and how it was exciting and everything to be able to do it with your friends. You know, what's next, and especially for even you as a cameraman, Lane, like how do you top that, right?
I mean, dude, you don't really, man. Like that was probably like top 2, top 3 craziest hunt of my life. You know what I mean? And I wasn't even the one pulling the bow back or even killing the deer, you know, but like it's just like Cory said earlier, dude, it's like a core memory. Like I can just always go like I'll never forget, dude, the days like weeks after that buck incident, or not buck incident, but like after we killed him, dude, every single day you would just nonstop think about it and just like you couldn't even believe that just all transpired. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just went home and kept killing deer, you know. Nothing really changed in my book, you know. Like, I mean, heck, the first 100-inch buck I seen, I probably got it, you know. Like, it didn't really, yeah, man. Dude, like I said, like, it's not, I don't know, like, it's all what you make out of hunting, you know. Some people chase the biggest buck ever, and dude, some people chase memories, you know.
Oh, absolutely. And now for again, like along with that, like how do you feel from because you were very much involved in the hunt, right? So you were part of the hunt. You and I mean, I videoed a buddy kill a bear this year, and I felt just as much as I killed the bear as he did. You know, it was just
Yeah.
one guy had the weapon and the other guy had the camera.
Yep.
For you, how do you feel like you did with the footage? You know, because you're trying to be present in the hunt, you know,
Yeah.
not to screw stuff up, and then try to get the footage and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely could have done probably a better job, but dude, it's real and raw, man. You know what I mean? Like, it's not it's not like some TV show where it's all, you know, pretty much in a lease blind somewhere, you know, over this freaking manicured clover plot, you know, and it's all just real and raw stuff. And so just try to capture it as best as possible, I guess. I don't know. Like you said though, like what was fun about Hunt with Cory is like the entire time he was like, dude, this is our buck, man, our buck. You know, like we killed this buck. It wasn't just like, yeah, man, I just smoked the biggest buck in my life. It always it always was we, us, like, which really like helped, like, yeah, it's easy to get down on yourself because you're like, damn, dude, like some dude just, he just freaking killed it. But dude, at the end of the day, like, it's one of your buddies, and it's freaking awesome that he killed it. Like, I kind of be more happy. Like you said, dude, I felt like I killed the buck. And that's what one of the best parts about hunting with Cory was.
And again, for you, Cory, what do you think about like what's next? I mean, where does this rank? I mean, obviously, it's got to be a great story, great buck, great everything. But does it change anything going forward for you as far as like hunting? And look, I feel like a perfect example is like Matt Lair. He killed a 200-inch buck, and there are some guys that are out there that would be like now puffing up their chest, like, look at me, I'm the Mr. 200. And Matt is such a humble dude. He's like, I just, that's just one deer. That's not who I am. That's, it's just one day in the life. Like, how do you feel about it? Because I mean, it's gotta be wild. I mean, every time you look at that rack, it's gotta be not only incredible deer, the story's great, but it's huge,
Yeah, I mean, I'm always going to try to chase and shoot big deer. I mean, there's no doubt I love doing that, just like everybody else. But I think what made that deer special was how hard we worked for it. We drove across the country and hunted for 10 days in 90-degree weather and scouted, God knows how many pieces of public, and got our ass kicked, like, hard. We were praying to shoot a doe in Nebraska, and we shot a doe, and we were thrilled because we had just been beaten into the ground. And then to go to Kansas and to be rewarded by shooting that big of a deer, I mean, it was awesome. I mean, I think, that is what I am chasing, is like the reward of working really hard at something to then finally win, after losing so many times. And that's what I'm chasing going forward. I don't know that, if I've chased a good deer in Ohio for a few years now, like, I'd love to shoot that deer because he's beat me so many times in Ohio. It would mean a lot, and it wouldn't matter whether he's 150 or 180. It'd probably mean as much to me as any other deer I've ever shot, and I think that's how I score a deer in my head, is how hard did I work for it? What price, not literally, but what price did I pay to put him on my wall? And that's the reward, in my opinion.
Yep.
I think that's a great way to look at it. My perspective on deer and big deer is a lot different than a lot of guys, because I enjoy the camp. I enjoy having fun. I enjoy shooting deer. And the rest of that stuff, it's easy to say that, well, that's what guys that don't shoot big deer say, but at the same time, I think that you're right. You could work really hard for quote unquote lesser deer, and it can mean so much more to you than, just a deer that you killed on accident, or, something like that. Or someone gives you a spot, someone gives you a pin, someone gives you a field to hunt, where I've got good deer, come and shoot him, and, he'll look good on the wall, but it probably doesn't mean as much as what effort you put in and the circumstances surrounding it. And I think that's great. That's a good message for people who are listening, especially coming on the back end of a, incredible story, great deer, to have that mindset going forward, instead of just a look at me, on to the next big one. Now we got to shoot a 190, right?
Yeah, I mean, I went to Wisconsin 2 weeks later, shot the smallest buck I've ever shot in my life. So I hope that tells you all you need to know,
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring that up. I mean, not for anything otherwise. I mean, because I love that, and I'm that guy. I could have. I was very, very close to tagging out here in Michigan on 2 bucks that were that would have combined score less than 100 inches. And I would have been absolutely ecstatic about that. But I think that's the beauty of hunting. I mean, sometimes it becomes the ugly side of it with hunter infighting and shaming and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, really, it is personal, and this kind of outlines the whole concept of, it's kind of about who you surround yourself with. And you guys obviously are on the same page as far as hunting, as far as having fun, as far as, the goals and kind of what you were able to do. And I think you were rewarded, tremendously for that. Like you said, you put in a lot of work to get that, and, to be able to do it with one of your friends that, I mean, no matter what happens in the future between the two of you, between hunting, between anything, you guys will always have this hunt to look back on. And it's just incredible. And it ended with a great deer. So that's why I wanted to have you guys on here together. Because like, I hope that the audience gets that you guys are kind of like two different personalities. And if you've listened to Cory on another podcast, I think we got the real Cory on this one. I did my best, and I want to thank Lane for helping bring that out too. Oh, so, anything else you guys got to add about like this hunt, or anything that maybe we didn't go over that kind of stuck out to you, just as far as like the experience of doing it?
I got a bunch of funny stories.
I was just about to give you your kudos, Lane, but let me do that first, and let's tell a story. That one thing I would say, being a person or making a decision that Lane made to get behind a camera, and I've done the same thing. I got to film the Grit series for a few years. It can be it can be daunting because you're running around the woods exhausted for somebody else's hunt. But being selfless enough to go do that can lead to some really cool experiences, and I know it has for me, and I hope it did for you.
Oh yeah.
I would say, honestly too, working as hard as we did and doing all that together, the number one thing is I hope you feel that's very much your deer and not just my deer. And getting to hunt with your buddies and do that type of stuff is, in my opinion, what it's all about. So.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you taking me, dude. That was a blast, dude. I'll never forget that, dude. Like, I was freaking, like I told Adam, dude, I think you were having computer trouble or something. That was probably like top 2, top 3 hunts of my life, and I wasn't even the one pulling the bow back. You know what I mean? Like, I was just so jacked up to be able to be with you and experience that, dude. Like, it was fun. And another cool part about you, Cory, was, dude, like I told Adam too, like, dude, it never once was like, me, mine, I, it was always like we, us, like team, like it, dude. And that was the coolest part of it all. Like it, it felt like I actually did something in it when really all I did was freaking have a camera, so. But
did a little more than that. But.
Yeah, I meant just a little bit, but dude, it was fun, man. Like I'll never forget that. Dude, freaking remember when remember we were cruising down the road and I had that shitty can of Zellos or something like that, and I pulled it open, dude. It's this little, like, it's pretty much like like Zins, dude, but I pulled it. It's like the shittiest brand, like the cheapest brand possible with sheets, right? So I freaking pull it open one of them, pull it out, and the whole pouch opens up, and dude, all the salt just goes right in Cory's eyes as he's freaking driving, dude. Oh my god, I still think about that and just freaking laugh, dude. Like, it was such a blast, dude. Remember when you fell with the e-bike in Nebraska?
Yeah, I thought we were gonna die. And you filmed that. That's all on film.
Yeah, dude. I cannot wait to watch this Grit episode, dude. It's gonna be a ball, dude.
We brought this e-bike all the way to Kansas and Nebraska. We rode it one time for 5 minutes, and we got to this path and couldn't even use it anymore. We had to walk across this broken down bridge. Well, we throw the bike in the woods to hide it because we're about to scale across these like beams over this 30-foot bridge, and we scout, don't find anything. We come back, and I'm like, Elena, I'll get the bike out, and I like jump down there to get it out, and literally fall into a sinkhole and just gone. And Lane's just filming this the whole time, and I just go off the ledge. I'm like, oh god.
Dude, it could have been so much worse. Luckily, you didn't
Yep.
get hurt. But oh my god, dude, that was so funny, dude.
Oh,
Man.
well, I'm really looking forward to seeing the episode of Grit. I want to thank you guys for, like I said, taking the time doing this. I was hoping to get you guys both in the same room, but Cory with the new baby and all that's a little bit more difficult. But I'm really glad that I was able to get you guys both on here. Where can people follow along with like your stuff, Lane, and then Cory, what's new with Latitude, and where can they see pictures of this buck, that sort of stuff?
Oh, you want me to go first or Cory?
Go
Heads
ahead,
up,
man.
man. Like, yeah. Well, I guess Instagram. I guess. Yeah, just in the presence, hunt, and or my personal one, just Lane Housner.
Yeah, same thing. Instagram, just my name, Cory Godar, and Latitude Outdoors is our brand, obviously, and the Grit series will be on YouTube, Latitude channel, and all these, the Nebraska hunt and the Kansas hunt will be on there. So, a whole lot of other shenanigans going on out there that will be involved, and then a lot of other episodes coming out after that. Alex Shada ended up going back to Kansas shooting a giant frickin' tank of a typical 8 and a couple other deer throughout the year. Wisconsin trip, some Ohio stuff, a couple Ohio deer, some Michigan deer, Illinois. DJ and AB went out there, had a great trip. DJ shot a frickin' giant, and so there should be a lot of good bucks on there this year, and a lot of running around all over the country. So hoping to have that live later end of summer. So
Well, guys, again, like, thank you so much. It was a lot of fun. I hope you guys had fun. Like I said, I wanted to get the real Cory, want to get the smiles and the laughter, so people can see what he's really like. But thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, boy. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, dude.
Yeah.
appreciate you, Adam.